The Art Beat, a weekly program putting you in touch with artists and arts events from the J.T. and Margaret Talkington College of Visual and Performing Arts at Texas Tech University. Hi there, everyone. This is Peter Martins with this week's Art Beat, and I'm excited to be here this week with Associate Professor from the Texas Tech School of Art, Dirk Fowler. Hi, Dirk.
Hey there.
Professor Fowler is here today to, among other things, talk about some of the student work that's coming up that's going to be viewable in the main gallery in the School of Art, I guess, starting in May and throughout the summer.
Yeah, that's correct. We have an opening reception on Friday evening, May 16th, and then the work will be pretty much most of the summer, I think at least through the end of July.
Tell us about the students that have work here. What type of students are we talking about? What degree programs are they in?
Yeah, so these are graphic design students who are about to graduate with a BFA in graphic design. This is sort of our capstone class in graphic design, the senior portfolio class. So this will be an exhibition of work produced not only in that class, but kind of throughout their time here at Texas Tech as graphic design students. You'll get to see examples of just about everything you can imagine that a graphic designer might make, if you know what that is.
So I was just going to ask, you might help my imagination out a little bit, because what I can imagine in graphic design is maybe not the sum total of what there might be. What sort of things, I think when people think of a school of art, they think, oh, there's going to be sculpture and painting and that sort of stuff. But obviously graphic design is a really large part of our program.
Yeah, it is, and this work is a little different from that, although you can see elements of almost any of the other disciplines. You'll see some drawing and other sorts of art, but you might see things like logo designs, packaging design. There'll be some elements like website design, branding projects. So they're going to be really varied, because each student sort of creates a body of work based on what they want to do as a graphic designer. They're now going to use these portfolios to go out and look for a job and hopefully secure a position somewhere as a designer. And this field is really broad, so they each cater their portfolio to the kind of work they want to do. So you'll see examples of everything. The portfolios themselves are booklets that you can flip through, thumb through, take your time looking at them there in the gallery. And then there'll be some video display as well to showcase interactive work, interactive pieces, web design, and things of that nature.
So it sounds like it runs the gamut from, well, the high-tech side certainly you're talking about. I'm always interested in the span of technologies that graphic design employs. I doubt you do woodcuts anymore, but what sort of techniques are there involved?
A student might actually do a woodcut if they felt that the particular thing they were designing called for that medium to be used. So, if someone was doing a children's book, they might decide to illustrate it using woodcuts. But we use all sorts of software, the Adobe Creative Suite. So most things are created in Illustrator or Photoshop, but they usually all start out with sketches, with handmade drawings in order to kind of work out the problem and solve that problem. Even web design starts usually with our students with a pencil sketch. So they're art students who have taken all sorts of studio classes as well, and they use those skills to problem solve however they need to execute the final piece.
Yeah, that sounds similar to, as a musician and occasional arranger. You just got to start with putting dots on the page with a pencil. That seems to work the best.
Yeah, absolutely. A web site doesn't create itself, so maybe we're almost there, but yeah, it has to start somewhere, and those are the kinds of things a graphic designer does.
Okay, so in their kind of immediate future with these students, you say they're taking their portfolios out into the wide world. Is there a typical balance you see between students that go into the private sector, so to speak, versus going on to graduate school? Is that as much of a thing with graphic design as some other arts disciplines, or not?
it isn't maybe as much of a thing. There will be a few that choose to go on to graduate school, and some that want to pursue teaching or other areas. But for most graphic design students, they're going to get the BFA, and then they're going to go to work. They're going to start producing things. Again, there's so many different areas they can go into, but they end up in small studios, in-house design agencies. For instance, we have a lot of alumni at HEB in their in-house design studio. So when you're shopping in HEB, you're likely to be buying products that the packaging was designed by a former Texas Tech graphic design student.
Interesting. All right. Well, as the parent of a current college student and an almost soon-to-be college student, it's good for me to understand that a graphic design degree sounds rather marketable. That's great.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, things are always changing. We're trying to always stay up with changing, evolving technologies, but I don't think it's in danger of going anywhere. We're always gonna need something that has identifiers. Someone's going to have to design a way for you to know what it is that you're doing, what you're purchasing, where you're going, how to get around. So it's a pretty diverse field that we're going to continue to need people doing those things.
Now, you mentioned the technology side. We've talked about that a couple times already. Maybe you've been at Tech a couple decades, like I have, right?
Yeah.
So how does one? I mean, I'm thinking in my own field, in my own teaching. 16th century music treatises really aren't changing all that much.
Yeah.
But you're kind of constantly living the mad scramble to, I guess, keep up and use new technology and stay ahead of that curve. How do you do that as a faculty member, and how do you see students grappling with that in their own lives?
Yeah, well, I mean, fortunately, I think the technology maybe comes easier to the students than it does to a person like me who's been teaching here 26 years. It's kind of just a never-ending, constant, I don't want to say struggle, but, we want to stay up with technology. How do you do that? You just have to be ever interested in it. You have to stay up with what's going on. So, I do believe that you have to have a foundation. The beginning, it's all about problem solving. It's visual problem solving. So how do you do that? The technology may change, but how to solve the problem really doesn't. Maybe, if that makes sense. We'll see. I never know what's coming next. I mean, now we have AI and all sorts of things to be thinking about and dealing with. We'll find a way to deal with those things like we always do. Like I said, I think the students they're eager to learn those things. Most of them, everyone has grown up with technology now, and so it's not unusual, and they embrace these changes and learn how to incorporate them, and they just become another tool, just like a pencil.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a very fascinating perspective, that really what students need to learn, what we maybe need to teach them are those more generalizable problem-solving skills, and the technology is just a means to that execution rather than being the driving force, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, the minute you learn one software package, there's one replacing it, right? Mm-hmm. So you can't ever really master that, I don't think. You just have to be open to change. But how to solve a problem, that's still the most important part.
That's fascinating. So you imply a little bit that problem solving is an ongoing thing you deal with, and I think about across our entire College of Visual and Performing Arts. It's always impressed me that the folks that are involved in studio practice or applied arts across our schools are very much involved in their own creative practice throughout. Obviously, that keeps them, as you were saying, kind of fresh and knowing what's going on in the field, which obviously makes it a better environment for student learning. So I wanted to go down that road a little bit with you and your ongoing practice. So you've been doing professional work for quite a long time. I've been, I guess, treated, I will say, the last few years to seeing a whole bunch of your work at Good Line Brewery over here, where I think you were one of the creative originators of the look and the design of that space and of the products and going back to the branding you mentioned right at the beginning. So how did that come to be with with kind of those entrepreneurs and business owners?
Yeah. Well, I think being a graphic designer, being involved in the community is just a really important part of what we do. I really think of designers as helping build the visual sort of identity of not just, a business in this case, but really a community. In this case, this was a couple of men who, had this idea that they wanted to open this brewery, and they had seen some of my work. And I've been working a lot with musicians, bands over the last 20 years or so, making posters and album covers, merch for touring musicians. That's sort of been one of my passions. They saw that work and felt like the aesthetic fit with their vision of what they wanted to create. They approached me, gave me some information about what they were trying to do, and I said, yeah, this is like a fun project. So if I'm interested in it, then I can get excited about it. But the best thing about it has been seeing the community that has formed or has been built, and being a part of that through designing the visuals. People enjoy it. They go there and they like the atmosphere, and pretty soon you've made friends there. You see the same people when you come in, and like being a part of that, I think, is rewarding part of what I do as a designer, is getting to be involved in something like that.
Well, I know whenever ever a new product comes out, in their line, there are certain visual elements that it kind of reminds me of something that I think it was Prokofiev, a famous composer, said about composing. Like, you have to put some pretty tight bounds around yourself to actually enjoy full creativity. And so I'm always impressed when I see a new thing, a new image, whatever, that you've gotten some basic elements like the business logo, those sorts of things, and sometimes it's right there kind of in your face, and sometimes it's really, really subtle that it's incorporated into this new look. So, I mean, I can't imagine how long it takes to craft something like that, even if it seems, kind of straightforward and obvious. I'm sure there's a lot of thought and craft that goes into it.
Yeah, a lot, yeah, for sure. It doesn't just happen. I've used the word problem solving too many times now, probably, but I think of it in that regard. Maybe when this particular client, or a client, I've always said sort of the kiss of death for a graphic designer is when the client says, "Oh, just do whatever you want, just do your thing." I have no idea what my thing is. I don't. That's not enough for me. I don't. My work doesn't happen in just big bold brush strokes, right? So I have to. So even when there's not a problem to solve, I'll create one for myself. So I'll make the problem. And in the case of this particular client, like, I set up sort of the brand identity, or I made the brand guidelines. Here's how everything's going to look. I made the rules for myself, and so then I have some parameters, and I know sort of how to approach the problem solving process, and that I've made myself a little set of rules.
Okay. Oh, that's fascinating. That does kind of sound like the state of modern composition, where there are no rules, so you have to make them for yourself. Yeah. Okay.
I say I don't really like rules, but if I make them myself, I suppose I can do that.
And they're okay. All right. Well, gosh, we started talking about the student exhibits that are starting at Landmark Arts here in mid-May and going, I think, through the summer. And I will say that if you want to see, I think, a fairly sizable gallery of Dirk Fowler's work, there is a full wall at Good Line Brewery with, I think, all of the individual kind of logos and promo images you've made for each of their products. So it's worth standing and gazing at for a good long while, because there's a lot of different ideas going on in that space.
Well, thank you for saying that, but please come see the student work.
Yeah.
Please visit the Landmark Gallery and support these students, see the work that they've produced. I think you'll be really amazed by the quality of the work and seeing what they were able to create.
Well, thank you so much. I look forward to it, and get over there once the semester's done in mid-May and enjoy it. during those hot months, right? The landmark's nice and cool, and it's in the School of Art. And at that time of year, parking on campus is actually easy.
Yes, all bonuses.
That's right. That's right. Well, I want to thank Dirk Fowler from the School of Art for talking with us today, and look forward to seeing listeners in the Landmark Arts Gallery on the Texas Tech campus at the School of Art in the coming weeks.
Yes, thank you very much.
The Art Beat, a weekly program putting you in touch with artists and arts events from the J.T. and Margaret Talkington College of Visual and Performing Arts at Texas Tech University.